Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. This is Daniel Estulin, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Estulin Media, in our program called World at Large. Well, first of all, Happy New Year's. It's the 1st of January, 2025. And as promised yesterday, today I want to talk to you about Greenland. So the question is, will Greenland become the 51st state of the United States? Now, Trump's statement that U.S. ownership and control of Greenland is a potential game changer. So let's analyze that. Let's start with the fact that the autonomous region of Greenland, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and the island itself, these are two different things. The Danish autonomy also includes numerous smaller islands. One of them has a land border with Canada. This is called Hans Island, over which Denmark and Canada have managed to wage a border conflict over the past half a century, albeit a very peculiar conflict at that. But this is a nuance. What is much more important is that in 2009, the Danish parliament gave Greenland broad self-government. In fact, 75.5% of the island's residents insisted on this during a referendum the year before. And since then, the three branches of power in Greenland have been subordinate to the island's self-government, with the formal primacy of the Supreme Court of Denmark in the judicial process. The Greenlandic people have been recognized by Copenhagen as a kind of a single and separate people, and Greenlandic language has remained the only official language on the island. In addition, the Greenlandic government has received the right to negotiate on behalf of the kingdom and conclude international treaties, international agreements with foreign states and organizations. And at the same time, all raw material revenues for activities in Greenland remain with Greenland. Denmark does not receive anything and only pays. They started with an annual subsidy of $500 million US. Now, in general, according to Article 21 of the Greenland Home Rule Act, a decision on its independence can be made by its residents themselves in a new referendum, albeit with the consent of the Danish parliament. If you kind of look at the wording of paragraph 4 of this article, it says that Greenland's independence implies that Greenland assumes sovereignty over Greenland. Let me explain to you. In other words, the current position of the world's largest island is very far from the status of its indisputable Danish land and could relatively easily result in the final loss of power of the Danish crown. And although today the majority of Greenlanders are against independence, their answers usually contain the additional "if it leads to decrease in the standard of living." That's an important if. And so, if anything, the draft constitution of a sovereign Greenland was ready a year and a half ago and was then handed over to Copenhagen. And that brings us to Trump and to today. Now, many people know about Trump's proposals as well as about American military facilities on the island, but not everyone knows that when, for example, back in April 1940, Denmark capitulated to the Third Reich, Washington immediately recalled its statement from 1920 that no third nation, including, by the way, Britain, would be accepted as a sovereign over Greenland, and also extended the Monroe Doctrine to the island. And here's something else to keep in mind. From October 1st, 2023, the Greenlandic company Inuksuk took over the maintenance of the American space base called P2FIK, formerly called Thule Air Base, which just happens to be the largest U.S. military facility on the island. Now, under the contract, Washington will allocate almost $25 million to the island until 2035 for maintenance alone, which is comparable to all the subsidies from Copenhagen. So it doesn't come down to Trump's remarks. The U.S. interest in Greenland is of absolutely strategic nature. Now, why do I say this? Because this is where the North American Airspace Defense Command is going to detect and intercept Russian missiles in the event of World War III. And actually, the Americans needed Denmark in NATO back in 1949, primarily because of Greenland, because Denmark was an important nation for the NATO alliance. And so if now, after Trump comes to power, Denmark, with the European Union behind it, decides to wage some kind of a counter game against the United States, then the fate of the island may in fact be sealed. It doesn't matter through a referendum or otherwise. And so finally, let me give you a few figures to understand the geographic location and the importance of Greenland. The distance from the Pituffik base to Washington is 4,206 kilometers. To London, 4,000 kilometers. To Copenhagen, 3,862 kilometers. To Murmansk, that's by Finland, in Russia, 3,000 kilometers. To Novaya Zemlya, okay, that's the airfield in Rogachevo, 3,000 kilometers. Pevek and Chukotka, 3,300 kilometers. To the northernmost point in Russia, 2,000 kilometers. These are very important numbers, especially if we're talking about global reach of thermonuclear weapons. So what we're seeing right now is a new version of the famous Monroe Doctrine. First, the Panama Canal. Now Trump is resuming negotiations to buy Greenland to ensure American security. And so the broader theme is that the Trump team, the Trump future administration, appears to be embracing the Monroe Doctrine, signaling that the United States will continue to dominate the Western Hemisphere for decades to come and will no longer tolerate any further competition for control of strategic maritime hubs, natural resources in this hemisphere. And so, as Washington attempts to rebuild American rare earth mineral supply, for example, moving away from China, Greenland's vast deposits of minerals, graphite, lithium, these are key raw materials for electric cars, wind turbines, power lines. It makes it critically important for Trump to acquire to ensure the viability of the clean energy transition in the United States. Now, China's monopoly on these minerals has forced Washington to keep a close eye on Chinese influence in Greenland. This is a global war for control. I want to remind you that during Trump's first term, Trump attempted to buy Greenland, calling it essentially a massive real estate deal. Now, this wouldn't be the first time. In fact, the United States has previously tried to acquire this resource-rich island, including a $100 million offer back in 1946. So that's on the one hand. And beyond, again, Greenland, a second Trump term would likely mean a revival, as I said, of the Monroe Doctrine, with zero tolerance for Chinese interference in the Western Hemisphere. Greenland, Panama, Canada, especially Greenland and Canada, despite being at different latitudes and on different sides of the Atlantic, are linked by the phrase transport corridors. And so Trump's Greenland push is primarily about control of the Northern Sea route and the battle for the Arctic, and giving Panama back is not just about the Panama Canal, but also about kicking China out of the macro region and a new round of American trade. That brings us to the last subject of the day. I want to talk to you about Trump's A-team, which is being put together as we speak. And that A-team is preparing for war. And so I think the main thing to understand and to decipher is what comes with Trump and who comes with Trump as of January 2025. Now, in 2016, Trump, without a team or a program, was elected with his own money and, most importantly, at the request of the American middle class, the so-called deplorables, as Hillary Clinton called them, which created the U.S. economy and also power, and which, with the withdrawal of industry from the country, sank the United States into absolute misery. Now, in normal democratic elections in the United States especially, the deep state nominates its candidates, both left and right, both Democratic and Republican, invests money in both of them and pushes them to victory. Trump is an aberration, created solely and exclusively because there is such a thing as internet, when information went beyond the official media scope owned by the Rothschilds and company. But then the deep state, after recovering from shock defeat, they dealt with him fairly quickly, and Trump was eliminated in 2020 and replaced with a feeble-minded Joe Biden. And then over the past 4 years, the US dollar and the financial system that controls the world began its definitive slide into oblivion, and the deep state, being pragmatists as they are, decided to negotiate with Trump and bring him back. Now, the Trump 2024 is a very different version of Trump 2016. Trump 2024 does not come alone, as in 2016, but as a part of this big deal with money from the military-industrial complex, something that the true blue MAGA people do not seem to get. And with Trump came the entire Silicon Valley and all its money. I repeat, in the United States, people have come to power who will invest in the real sector of the economy. And before people were ruled by fear, in other words, COVID epidemics, today the transformative event and the source of fear shall be war. And this is what will guarantee the game for a long time. And Europe absolutely will pay for it. First Germany and then France, whose entire industrial sector has been destroyed. And so as a result, a very long-term arms market is created, because how else can you survive? Again, do understand that Trump was elected by the military-industrial complex and by those who play the long game. A lot of money is at stake. And Trump brings a team made up of two large sectors. The first, these are the people who must guarantee his revenge. Trump doesn't forget. And the second are the people who come with the objective to implement the ideology of Make America Great Again. For example, Peter Thiel is the answer to the question, what is next? We're talking about a billionaire venture capitalist, one of the leaders of Silicon Valley, and the American IT sector is also the main lobbyist for the cryptocurrencies. Peter Thiel is an openly gay man who registered his marriage in Vienna. Thiel chose and controls J.D. Vance, who is his ideologies and value profile is a complete opposite of Thiel. And Trump has appointed Vance as his U.S. vice president. Now, what does it tell me? This suggests that the team is not formed according to a principle of values, but according to the principle of objectives. We will achieve peace through strength and war. We will beat you into submission, for as much as Trump talks about peace. I want to remind you that Peter Thiel founded the company called Palantir Technologies back in 2003, which was created to monitor the environment based on the mathematical theory of pattern recognition, risk identification, and hedge funds. And so for the first 4 years of company's existence, the only client was the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. And so the CIS, Palantir, implemented state-of-the-art intelligence technologies, from environmental monitoring, identifying certain processes in the early stages, to spatial recognition. And in this sense, Palantir is world's #1 company. And so the incoming team will not abolish the global dollar system, it will strengthen it and actively intertwine it with cryptocurrencies. And one of the control mechanisms with which they will now control society is, in fact, cryptocurrencies. Because you have to understand something. In digital currencies, you are not the owner of your money at all. Palantir is the main company providing software technology. It's a financial surveillance system. It is an implementer and partner of the US Department of Health, which in 2020 commissioned Palantir to operate a platform to combat coronavirus. There's something else you have to understand. Palantir's current partner is the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement Services. They know absolutely everything about everyone who crosses the border. And so surveillance of people, facial recognition, hidden collection of personal data, this is Palantir's specialty. And so the company is an apologist for the New World Order, which is not based on laws, but on rules. Where politics and politicians, just a kind of think of it as a shell behind which such structures are located. And this is the New World Order. So Thiel is one of the main grain cardinals, the second most important of the Trump team, which came to power seriously for a very long time. They are not going to give power up. There's a term in psychology called mental warfare. Mental warfare has three stages, or three levels. The first level, which is the lowest level, is information warfare, which fills the information space and puts people under control. And so, before the start of the special military operation between Russia and Ukraine, we were actually in a state of complete information control through people, structures, on which everything depended on technology. The second level is information cognitive operation, the formation of a method of obtaining information. When the target audience is fragmented, it is formed to instill a certain way of, let's say, consuming information, managing emotions. So information and cognitive dominance is one of the main priorities of the United States of America. And the third, the highest level, is the accumulation of the results of the first two levels, the formation of a worldview, reformatting, consolidation of a certain system of values and views. This is the mentality of strategic or mental warfare. And so Russia's war is mental, and our level is working with values. We can't really do anything about the information level because the West controls it, but still, the sympathy, the empathy for Russia in the entire world is colossal, based on our value system. The West can't do anything about that. And for the most part, the global South is simply waiting for us to win the war, to join forces with us openly. Now, the first representative of Western companies who met with Zelensky since the beginning of special military operation was a guy by the name of Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir. Now, Palantir fully supplies the Ukrainian armed forces, forms an overall operational picture. All intelligence data goes through them. So you have Palantir on the one hand, you have Elon Musk and Starlink on the other. They provide intelligence and shape the entire operation of the Ukrainian army. Let's look at some of the other members of Trump's A-team. The most sinister, I'd say, representative of the Trump team and the great eminence himself is Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google and career employee of the CIA. Google is CIA, you have to understand that. So Schmidt is a billionaire who is the main lobbyist for Silicon Valley in the Pentagon and in the intelligence community. And Schmidt is the person through whom all funding for the development of new technologies in the American defense industry passes. Intelligence technologies, robotics, drone development. And so Schmidt had the idea of making a cheap drone that would effectively destroy multi-million-dollar tanks and planes. Schmidt said that the revolutionary using AI technologies in military affairs is a new project in terms of the level of influence on military affairs, the way of waging war and industry. It is the third after the invention of artificial intelligence, gunpowder, and nuclear weapons. And so Schmidt said that they have already digitalized the entire database of humanity as collected throughout history. Think about that. They have digitalized the entire database that humanity has collected throughout history. You have crypto, you have artificial intelligence. All of this requires huge amount of what? Electricity. And electricity is becoming a scarce resource for the United States. And so he said, Schmidt, electricity is becoming scarce. We need to be better friends with Canada because Canada has a lot of hydroelectric power and we don't have enough. And we also need to get along with the Arabs to give us cheap hydrocarbons. And that is why Trump wants Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. Now, what did Trump say? He promised to turn the United States into an energy superpower. Now, why is this important for Russia? Because Russia is an energy superpower. And this is the answer to the question, why does the West want us destroyed? It has nothing to do with dictatorship, democracy, human rights. It's nothing to do with appeasement. It's business, nothing personal. And so the United States needs to eliminate the Chinese as their main technological competitor, and Russia is America's main military competitor because we have nuclear weapons. And they understand, the West, that they will deal with China if they deal with Russia. And so when Donald Trump and the US administration hiding behind the rhetoric, I have come to end wars, He will absolutely restart the military-industrial complex on the basis of modern technologies that will provide them with military superiority over Russia and over China in the commercial, technological, productive spheres. And a new team, the A team, is coming in that predicts peace through force, the accumulation of power and guaranteed destruction. You will be subjugated or you will be destroyed. And so concentration of power, restarting industry, science, technology, primarily for war, is America's strategy with Trump 2 administration. Now, what should Russia do in this situation? Well, first of all, Russia needs to become strong from within. The solution will not come from Russia's integration of the agreements into the world. You cannot be integrated into the Western world and maintain your independence. Now, until recently, Russia sat at the table with the dealers where the rules of the game were defined by the house. And we need to change the rules of the game, because if you play by house's rules, in the end, you always lose. Now, you cannot predict the future, but you can be prepared for it. And so Trump's new imperialists are preparing for war, formulating a war agenda. And so Russia too must prepare for what's coming. And Russia's task is to break the West's will, their ability and willingness to act against us through violence. And so Russia needs to make US afraid. And so in this sense, you can say Oreshnik is the personification of Russia's strategic silence. For Russia, the key is the presence of will. When the US is run by mafioso types, and it's run by the mafioso types, this is an indicator of global crisis. And so Russia must talk to them not as merchants to merchants, but as warriors. Russia is a warrior country, and it must engage in conversation with the United States of America like a warrior would of a merchant. And so today, the special military operation in Ukraine is like a game of Go, and there are no draws in Go. This is a war everywhere and nowhere. It penetrates deep inside our psyche. To win, we must become who we are. Who are we? We are the civilization of the Russian world, a civilization of warriors. And so if the motherland demands it, we will all get up and go, and we must be ready to sacrifice ourselves in the name of common good. And only when we become a warrior country with the mentality of everyone in their place, they will collapse and give in. I'm Daniel Estulin. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year's. Again, join our page at estulin.media and also our free channel at YouTube, Daniel Estulin. Thanks. Have a wonderful week. Until tomorrow, goodbye.